Katherine Berry. I'm branch manager of Shrewsbury Library here in Shropshire in the UK. We're going to take you on a virtual tour of our library. So welcome. We're looking forward to showing you some lovely bits of it. Shrewsbury School was founded by Edward VI in 1552. The buildings were used until 1882 when the school moved to Kingsland. The buildings were then handed over to the town, which became the public library and museum in 1885. The buildings eventually became unsafe and were closed in 1976 for extensive renovation and reopened in 1984 to the public.
Within school gardens there is a bust of romantic novelist and poet Mary Webb, who was born in Shropshire and lived in many surrounding villages of Shrewsbury in the early 20th century. Her love of Shropshire and its beautiful countryside can be found in her work, and the bust is engraved with the titles of her famous novels, such as Gone to Earth and The Golden Arrow.
Charles Darwin came to school here in 1818 when he was 9 years old, but he did not enjoy the experience at all. The schooling was wholly classically based, which he found difficult and dreary. Charles was to remark in later life that school as a means of education to me was simply a blank. His interests for collecting and observing plants, insects and birds stood him in good stead for his life ahead. He enjoyed hunting and fishing, but drew the ire of his father, who commented, "You care for nothing but shooting, dogs and rat catching, and you will be a disgrace to yourself and your family." Strong words indeed. The statue of Darwin was unveiled on the 10th of August 1894 and cost at the time £1,086. The building has 2 sundials on the south wing. The sundials show Shrewsbury Time, which is about 10 minutes after Greenwich Mean Time. Over the archway is the coat of arms of Charles I. The 2 statues represent Polymath and Polymath. The one on the right is Polymath, a lover of learning, with his hat ready to be filled with knowledge. The one on the left, Polymath, a person of wide knowledge or learning, has a hat brimming with knowledge. The inscription is from Isocrates and says, "If you are a lover of learning, you will become learned." This is Riggs Hall, Grade 2 listed part of the building, oldest part of the building with its lovely beams. The oldest part of the building is Riggs Hall, which predates the establishment of the school, having been built before 1540 against the old town walls. It is a timber-built hall and solar with a stone-walled cellar. Behind Riggs Hall there were 5 courts and a playground, but the boys in the school were left to their own devices a lot of the time. Any disagreements were settled by fists, and the headmaster, Dr. Butler, mostly turned a blind eye to the fights, which were said to be several a week. The wooden beams in the upper Riggs area have the marks which indicate prefabricated beams. These marks were used during the renovations. The upper part of Riggs also shows a portion of the original wattle and daub, now covered in perspex, which shows the interior materials, which included hazel twigs, clay, cow dung and straw. Of particular note are the gable end carvings of Riggs Hall. Some of it is original, the rest was carved during the renovations by a local carpenter, who followed tradition by modelling his own head. The vine leaf and grape designs is characteristic of the work of Shrewsbury carpenters from around the late 16th century and appears elsewhere in the town. This is the West Wing. It was originally used as a chapel in the old school, and it's where we keep our fiction now. The West Wing housed the school chapel and was consecrated in 1617. It is remembered as a cold, dark room by the pupils, and the boys would play cricket in there before services to warm up. The panelling and the pulpit were removed and taken to the new school at Kingsland. Nowadays, this is the library's fiction section. Originally, the foyer was an outdoor courtyard, as indicated by the stone walls and the drain pipes. The original entrance to the building was the archway, which now leads through to the stairs, and you can still see the hinges on the archway. During the renovations, the existing buildings were linked to provide the new reception area. They used glass, lead and oak to blend in with the rest of the building. A plaque marked the reopening of the library by Princess Margaret in 1983. She wasn't the first princess to visit, though. Princess Victoria visited in 1833, while she and her mother, the Duchess of Kent, stayed at Pitchford Hall. One of the boys described her as a short, uninteresting girl.
This is the Darwin Room, and the notable thing about this room is the crests on the ceiling, which are from local families of Shrewsbury who were trustees of the school.
This room has a long history of use as a library. In 1612, £100 was spent on books, which is about £12,500 in today's money. Back then, the books were chained to the shelves and displayed with the spines at the back of the shelves. At that time, there was a long gallery which was used for exercise in poor weather. During the Civil War, the Archbishop of York and other noblemen lodged in the school. Charles I was in the council house across the road. In 1642, a council of war met in the library, and according to the then headmaster, when they left, some books disappeared with them. The school was also forced to lend the king £600. By the 18th century, the school was in serious decay, and the library was also being used as a hairdressing salon for the boys. The ceiling in this room was designed by John Hiram Haycock, a prominent Shropshire architect, and it features coats of arms of school trustees. These were local families such as Rock, Loxdale, Corbett, Cludd, Iton, Hill and Owen. In 1990, an earthquake measuring 5.1 on the Richter scale hit Shrewsbury and caused some damage to the pinnacles on the tower. They were in danger of falling and had to be secured, and also created the crack in the window at the end of the room. 20 years earlier, this room was so structurally insecure it could have meant collapse. One of the first things you notice in this room is the beautiful Gothic window. But this room also has the wonderful carvings in the wooden panels that surround the walls. The carvings date back to the 18th century, and they hide carvings on the stonework underneath. It was a privilege extended to the boys on leaving that they could carve their names into the woodwork, and some are immensely intricate and striking. We have unfortunately never found the name Darwin, presumably due to his lacklustre performance during his school days. This room would have been divided by 2 screens below the horizontal roof beams, which would allow 3 classes to be taught simultaneously. It was heated by only 2 small stoves and would not have been a nice place to study in the winter. At Christmas time, a stage would be erected at the far end of the room for the performance of plays. Prior to the renovations in 1978, an archaeological dig took place, and several interesting finds were made. Some items dating back to the Saxon period. They found pottery shards, a pipe, a collar, and a letter about Shrewsbury races. A child's shoe was also found on one of the beams. It is an old English superstition to hide a child's shoe for good luck and to ward off evil. They also found a forged coin, gold on either side but brass within, which is now in a collection of forgeries at the British Museum.
At the top of the stairs is the clock tower. The clock was made by John Bryant of Hertford in 1814. The company Smiths of Derby annually service the clock, and each week it must be wound to bring the weights that are enclosed within the staircase back to the top. There are 52 steps that lead to the tower rooftop with the flagpole, and from here you can see spectacular views of Shrewsbury and the surrounding countryside.
So thank you for joining us on our tour. I hope you found it informative, and if you're ever in Shrewsbury in the UK, do come and pop and say hello.